Good morning, good afternoon, dear viewers, friends, and colleagues. Welcome to the channel Innovative Sustainability. Today we continue a discussion on the process development and sustainability in the pharmaceuticals, specifically in vaccines world. And today our speaker is Dr. Tony D Amore. He's joining us from Toronto, and he will be talking about the process development challenges and opportunities. So Dr. Tony started his education. He got his PhD at University of Windsor. Then he continued and received an MBA from the Wilfrid Laurier University. He started his career at Labatt Breweries and then joined Sanofi vaccine production in 1994. So since then, he had 20 years of career at Sanofi, going from scientist all the way to vice president of product research and development. And he's now consultant process biologics. Tony, it's great pleasure to see you here. Welcome to the channel and looking forward for our conversation.
Yes, thank you very much for the invite and as well looking forward for the discussion.
Okay, so the first question that always comes to mind, because it's on sustainability and innovation, what sustainability means for you in your field, in your experience? Any comments, thoughts about that?
Well, and it's a good question, and I think sustainability to to people may be a different meaning to them. To me, sustainability, as the word sounds, is to sustain, to be able to continue, and to be able to do something. Let's say what you're doing now, you can do again in the future, which can apply to, let's say, the development of a vaccine. But I don't really think that I could use the word sustainability because each vaccine has its own story that it says. So it's basically working on something new that you use your experience, background, and know-how to be able to move forward and being able to sustain in terms of the ability to make vaccines, but in terms of the process and how you go about that, it's not always what I would consider to be sustained, as sustained. Although, if we look at the world right now in terms of mRNA and what it's doing and how it's sort of captured interest, it's getting closer in terms of what I can think of being a sustainable platform to be able to make different products using the same, let's say, process and platform.
So, in your opinion, mRNA vaccine development can move faster from that perspective, or you see challenges would be there as well, like compared.
Well, it has the potential to be faster, but like any other platform that has been developed over the years, I mean, the question is, can I make all my vaccines with that platform? I think the
Mhm.
jury is still out on mRNA to be able to answer that question to say, oh yes, well every disease that's unmet that I want to develop a vaccine, I'm going to use mRNA. They may initially start that way, but it may not necessarily work. But I think it's getting closer. I think it's getting closer in terms of the ability to be able um, to be able to develop a vaccine using, if not identical, at least a very similar process to develop a number of different vaccines.
Got it. I know in the past when we worked together, there was always a discussion about raw material and vendors securing raw materials. And also, I guess sustainability was coming of how robust they are and how reproducible the results will get. In your current role, do you see any impact of this recent move to have green chemistry? as components or raw materials. In your opinion, does it make impact? Is that significant in terms of vaccines or less so? Because I guess it would be more prominent for drugs. But yeah, what would be your comments on that?
Well, first of all, I mean, in terms of which was when you talked about green raw materials or the green for vaccine making, it doesn't register as a high concern, at least in the environment that I've been working on lately. I mean, it's there, but it doesn't seem to resonate as something difficult or something to be concerned about. But what does resonate from what you talked about is the ability to ensure you have raw materials available not only for your current work, but if
Mm.
you are successful, you're going to be going very quickly to say, for example, you get excellent phase 1 results. I'm going to go to phase 2. I'm going to get to phase 3 as fast as I can, and I want to be able to license this. You have to even be thinking at phase 1 or even before, if it's raw materials that are not necessarily on the market right now, how are you going to be able to do that? And can you get vendors to make it? If they are raw materials on the market, do you have access to it? And when should I sign contracts? I mean, if we go back to the early days of mRNA, well, even COVID, but let's just say, especially doing mRNA in the period of COVID, it was just to find the components for the lipids and also the enzymes that were needed. It was a difficult task because those current vendors could not provide the amount of material that was being requested. Uh,
Yes, I remember that was even for plastics, anything like even supplies, consumables was extremely hard to get because logistics was affected, but also insufficient production capabilities
yeah.
for the
And we're,
vendors.
and you know, and I'm
Yeah.
and I'm currently seeing that in the adjuvant field, where companies and biotechs, big pharma down to biotechs, looking at novel adjuvants for their products. And the question comes to this, that basically, if you're successful, do you have a partner in place that can make sufficient components of uh, of those adjuvants to be able to support you in the future. And unfortunately, you have to be thinking about this at the early phase. You should always be thinking about, what if I'm successful? I mean, if you fail, you fail. There's really not much to
So,
think
yeah.
about other than go course correction. But if you're successful,
Mhm.
you should be thinking about that early in the phase to be able to react to it in sufficient time.
From what I'm hearing is I think I don't know, maybe about many businesses you can say, but considering vaccines are always more scrutinized, it's tough in terms of regulatory environment because of safety first and so forth. It seems that vaccine manufacturer or developer has to be really well prepared and very resourceful. It seems that way, and proactive in terms of planning and in terms of testing. But speaking in practical terms, what you would recommend to assess the needs or be prepared, for the final deliverable if successful for phase 3, when you're just starting, like what type of things the developer has to do.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about, okay, so if it's your first time through in terms of making a vaccine,
Mhm.
obviously, I mean, you have to choose how you're going to make it. Okay. And how you're going to make it will be either through a well-known platform that
Mhm.
quality and regulatory have a lot of experience with, and therefore they can help and guide, and there's more information available, versus it's a novel components, novel process that's being used. And then the onus is on the developer to ensure that the product that's being made is safe and that they have data that demonstrates that it's safe. Uh, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, that at the end of the day, that's what they have to achieve. They have to ensure that they've met the regulatory and quality aspects to ensure that the product that they make is safe, which means that all the raw materials, they're knowledgeable and the raw materials are safe. They have data on the overall product being safe, and they have overall data on the formulation of the product that it's reproducible.
But it's a lot of work, but basically what you say is that if a developer chooses the known platform, there is potential that would be less unknowns on the road, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah, yeah,
Of course, if the type of product permits them to use it, permits to use this platform,
right,
then
right.
it's easier. I mean, easier in terms of like there is some known factors
Yeah,
in many what would be unknown for them.
yeah. I mean, when you're working with a known platform, the data is already out there and what you need to achieve. So you know what you have to achieve, and you know that others have been able to do it, and therefore it quote unquote should be easier. It's not 100%, but it should be easier in terms of, again, depending on the antigens that you're using and the disease that you're trying to prevent. In general, that would be better. And it would be my recommendation to think about, uh, let's say, known platforms. And the more products you can make from a platform, a given platform, the easier and more cost-effective it's going to be for the manufacturer.
Yeah, that was my next question. Considering the competitive environment and the fact that vaccines always take a long time, no longer than typical timeline for drug development for all these reasons you mentioned, safety first and demonstration of safety in choosing components, developing the process. What would be your thoughts about the opportunity to reduce cost, if at all? And also in terms of speed, do you see any indication where new technologies like in artificial intelligence may help, whether it's realistic or not? Yeah, your
Yeah,
comments,
I
please.
think with that, I can answer that in two ways. So when we're trying to, let's say, reduce overall cost, I mean, I can think of it in one way of saying work with a defined platform and the ability of that specific platform to do multiple products. So, if we use mRNA as an example, mRNA, I'm going to make all my products for mRNA. Now, the jury is out whether or not that's possible. But anyway, let's use that as an example of any type of future platform. So I have a platform. I'm going to make all my vaccines with this platform, right?
Mhm.
And so because I'm doing that, the facility I'm going to use is the same. So that's going to reduce the cost because there isn't really any significant changes that's being made in either needing a new facility or that you have to make changes within the facility. No, that's in. You can, let's say, the raw materials you're going to need. So you can be more forward thinking in terms of signing contracts to ensure you get the raw materials, chemicals, vials,
Mhm.
label them, everything that you need to actually get the vaccine out. You can put that into place and have long-term contracts. Um, and then the other is to be thinking about how I can make the process itself more cost effective. In one
Mhm.
way is, we go with what I thought was, not thought, a number of people have thought going with single-use disposables in your
Mhm.
process, which can ensure a more, let's say, sterile environment
Okay.
in a fully enclosed system. and not having to rely on large facilities with a lot of, let's say, stainless steel equipment in there, which is, very expensive, both in terms of, the equipment itself, but also the recycling or the cleaning of the equipment that after every time that you use it. So I think there's opportunities to do that. Now, having said that, what's interesting is that I would say throughout my career, um, I go back when you said 1994 when I started. The rule of thumb there was it takes 10 to 12 years to develop a vaccine from start to finish. Fast forward 30 years later, and we're basically saying the same thing. It takes 10 to 12 years to develop a vaccine. So one can argue and say, well, you haven't really saved any time. Well, you also have to consider that there isn't utilization of a fixed platform right now. I mean, yes, people are looking at mRNA, so people have, if you use E. coli expression systems, the yield was significant. I mean, you're saying, well, you can make a lot of product, but it wasn't suitable for all diseases. Uh,
So
so,
actually, true.
so I think, there is room. I think what the biggest impact will be around artificial intelligence, and it's quite interesting because I've heard pros and cons about artificial intelligence, but for me, I think having started, let's say 30 years ago in using neural networking in terms of how to develop processes, this is just, using something that has been refined. So what you're basically relying on is a large set of data which can be synthesized as quickly as possible,
Mm.
that will allow you to understand your process, where you should make changes, and how well those changes will be able to increase your productivity and time. And with that, as you increase your productivity and your ability to do it, it's going to result in cost savings. Secondly, you can apply that from with overall product development at the clinical trial site when you can use AI to understand all your patients that you're using in the clinical trials and being able to synthesize where does this vaccine really help? What are the specifics of each of these individuals? What is the commonality? And can we start working towards a personalized type vaccine? Which again, may be just something that's brainstorming, but it has that potential that you can get close to that. And if you put that all together, it's got to me, it resonates in being able to deliver faster at less cost.
Yes, it's interesting thought you bring. I think 2 years ago I had the opportunity to visit Royal Hospital in London, and they had facility there where like personalized medicine is basically made. I think they're taking basically samples from patients and develop based on that. And the facility is directly in the hospital, so the logistics is very short. It's within the building or maybe between the buildings in the same facility. So technically it's working like that. But do you think that would be the future, or it's just the niche that will
Well, I
remain?
mean, it's got the potential because as you're working towards more personalized,
Hmm.
I mean, it'd be very similar to how when you do gene expression or cell therapies and that gene and
Yes.
cell therapies, where you're customizing it specifically to the patient. So
Hmm.
in that respect, your production is going to be smaller space
Okay.
because, right? You'll just be making, you may have a lot of small units
Hmm.
operating because you're customizing it to, let's say you got 100 people, they're all different. You're going to customize 100 different. You don't need a large volume, but you need to
No.
run. 100 little
very
small
quickly.
development things. So I mean, gene and cell therapy, it has been working well, and they still have a lot of way to go. But at the same time, yeah, it's an interesting. It's interesting to entertain that thought, but I think we're closer today to get there than we were obviously even several years ago.
Good, got it. Okay, one more question would be, yes, I think about the cost we spoke. Marketing decisions, marketing research to choose the product, marketing decisions happening during the process development or development of the product. How does it affect the process development, the speed of product development, and also success? Any comments from your experience on that?
Well, again, there is, let's say, indirect impact on the development based on marketing decisions. Now, from a product developer, understanding the market isn't as important as understanding the product that you need to make. So obviously, people in marketing and commercial operations, the medical, clinical areas, have knowledge on the disease, the endemics, pandemics, and knowing what type of products we need and what could generate revenue to the company.
Yeah.
And then the company decides which ones to choose on, and we do our best to ensure that we can meet the needs of the company by developing the process. Now, the part that would influence that is our ability to make it, because it can be we're being asked to make something that we would not be able to make in the near future. So an example would be for um, let's say a company that has no mRNA experience,
Yeah,
that the management says, I want you to make this product on mRNA.
from scratch.
So there's a large learning curve that the company needs to make for that to happen. So that's actually going to make a bigger investment that's needed. So that would be, okay, that would be, if you don't know how to make it, to invest in it, it's going to take time. But in terms of the impact of the company on the product development, it's the product development is there to serve the company, and what the company decides. I mean, they could stop at phase one. So we do the work, we do a phase one trial, the trial fails, the company no longer is interested, and so then we work on something else.
True,
And
true.
that's not really in our hands to decide that.
Yeah, that's true. But sometimes the product is promising, but still decisions are made because pricing or actual assessment of the market. And yes, it's always not in line with scientists, I guess, the
Yeah.
mindset, but it's a reality that, the company has to address, and
Yeah.
that happens.
And the
Um,
decisions and the
and the,
decisions being made does impact the development one way or another. Yeah.
Another question would be, at least here in UAE, in United Arab Emirates, we see the increasing interest towards tech bio rather than biotech, because tech bio is considered that make it faster returns, and basically creating tools that may help with health in healthcare, can be adapted faster. Some apps also, they all based on AI, based on the fact that there is a data that was processed, models were created, AI application happens, and then it's used. So this definitely the shift towards that. So in your opinion, how for the biotech companies to sustain themselves in business, um, you know, necessary movements or necessary strategy to attract the investments, nevertheless, despite all
Oh,
this competition?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's a very good question. I mean, for me, the biotechs, I see sort of two groups of biotechs. I see the biotechs that are creating a novel uh, process or a novel antigen, a novel way of delivery, whatever that could be. And their interest is to be able to sell this in the future in
Right.
terms of big pharma buying it. And there's
Mm,
other ones that are developing it, but their main purpose is to be able to develop and turn into their own company in the future. And you have investors in both. So, the investor wants a return on it on their investment, right? And so I think basically two things. One is the environment of biotechs over the last few years has been decreasing. If you look at the total number and the work and the number of vaccines, because investment money has decreased. Yes, there
mm,
are some that are still getting significant amount of investment, but I think the key to ensure that happens is that you have data which supports the ability to make this product. You
mhm.
have demonstrated something. So, you have to go to the investor and say, no, you at this point in time, this is what we've been able to achieve. And that is to ensure that the investors have confidence in your ability. And then there's also promoting yourself to the larger the large pharma companies, because they themselves are also on the looking to
Mm.
work either in partnership with biotechs or when you take the model of biotechs who just want to sell it, that they buy the technology early on. And typically it's early on because the sooner you get in, the sooner they lower the cost. The more, let's say, as the product is being developed and the results are getting better and better, that becomes more expensive for the company because there's a higher degree of success, that they're being demonstrated. So it's really, I don't want to say it's a gamble, but to a certain degree, it is a gamble in terms of the investment that's put into a vaccine
Mhm.
development in the early phases based on the knowledge that exists and the evidence that it currently exists that it could be, let's say, profitable or would work, but it doesn't guarantee success.
Success in terms of hitting all the targets, right? Like if
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
effective and yes, so potent and safe, first of all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
And I think pricing as well. Sometimes vaccines are very expensive and they only for certain markets, but I guess the idea is to achieve different type of markets with the production. And some markets are very sensitive to price. And only price is basically competing there, not really anything else. That's the first question that people ask. So the cost of goods becomes very, very, very critical. Okay, I think we covered a lot of things and a lot of aspects of process development. I guess working with the PAT for several years, I was wondering, in your view, when you design the process, do you see it would be easier to have some um, inline sensors directly embedded, even in a small scale, so that you get more data from the process, more data points to analyze for machine learning potentially? What would be your comments on that? Or
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the more, and again, we strived when we were working in the labs to ensure that we had sensors that gives us information during the course of whether it's fermentation,
Hmm.
mainly during the fermentation to be able to understand what you're getting. But obviously, as we talked about artificial intelligence and whether it was, uh, neural networking years ago, basically you need to rely on data. So the more data that you can generate, the more data that can be synthesized, and give you, let's say, more information that you can use to develop your process. So more information coming in is going to allow you to move faster. It's going to allow you to understand the parameters of being able to scale up. It's going to be able to understand the likelihood of being able to be reproducible. And all of that will shorten the time in your ability to go from start of the vaccine to actual licensing the vaccine. So I think the more you know about the process, the more you understand what's happening, the more it'll be a benefit for success.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. And I think one more question that I always have in mind, but I know it's tough to answer it because we're talking about the circular economy and securing supplies and so forth. Um, do you see any economical value for the pharmaceutical companies to have their own raw material plants for the basic things, or like any consideration in that regard for now, or it's kind of far-fetched from.
Well, it's again, I think there's examples of both. So some companies have decided that they were going to make their own raw materials. And
Mhm.
adjuvants is an example for some companies that they have their own adjuvant and they make their own adjuvant. Others buy adjuvants from a reliable company, supplier. Um, I I think it really is a question about the company itself and what it wants to do and how much it wants to control. And so I could see for a novel antigen that's been licensed, that's being used by one company, that they will make it themselves because they're the only ones that need it, and it prevents
Mm,
others from having access to it.
got
Then
it.
you have the smaller vaccine companies that can't afford really to invest in making the raw materials. So they get into agreements to vendors in terms of supplying it. And there are some big vendors who do supply raw materials to smaller biotech companies.
Got
So
it.
both models are there. It really is a question about how the company is organized and really how they, from a financial decision, do we make it internal or do we buy it?
So it's based on the size, maybe, or revenue, and also, I guess, strategically, right? For how long the
Right,
product intended
right.
to be. If it's you
That's right.
intend to use it for long term, then of course you want to invest and so forth. I think we're closing to the kind of. It gives me a hint that I have only 3 minutes left. So yes, I probably will wrap up here. So Tony, thank you so much for the discussion. Was very insightful. Many topics that I had in mind. I believe many people who are in the field, they also one way or the other processing those thoughts. But also some things that does not occur, and it was good for you to kind of have bigger description and insights into the topics like process development. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you here, and hopefully we meet again for different topics and continue
Yes.
discussion.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. It was a pleasure. And like I say, yes, I hope the discussion is helpful and looking forward to maybe any future discussions.
Thank you so much. Dear viewers, stay tuned. Dr. Tony's contact details will be under the video in the description. So if you need collaboration or looking for advice, any to contact, please do. It would be there. So thank you so much, Tony, again, and everyone. Bye for now. Thank you.